Welcome to episode 41 of Outdoor Gear Chat. I am genuinely delighted because I've been waiting for this for some while, Matt. We're talking how to keep warm with Dr. Down. I'm joined as always by Cathy. Hiya.
Hi Wayne, I'm Cathy Casey, director and owner of the Climbers Shop in Ambleside and the Joe Brown shops in North Wales. And over the years, we have had a very, very, very long relationship with one of our esteemed suppliers, Mountain Equipment. And Dr. Matt Fuller is a product engineer at Mountain Equipment and has been for many years. And when I discovered he was known as Dr. Down, I was like, right, that's it. You've got to come and have a chat with us. So welcome, Matt. We're going to be asking loads of questions about how to keep warm and lots of nerdy geekery about feathers and down. And I'll try not to do my my little hand fronds that I always do when I'm describing it and no one can see it on a podcast. But it's great to speak with you, Matt. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. This is always a useful thing to be doing.
It is, and as we're finding with this podcast series, with these series is that we're doing, loads of people are getting loads of value out of listening to them as well, especially with technical experts like yourself, and getting loads of I don't know, I guess behind the scenes stuff almost. So yeah, a quick one. We are romping in on 15,000 downloads at the moment. So Cathy and I had a very excited exchange not long ago about that. And I think that, you know, it's genuine delight at those people who are listening to us wittering on about all sorts of different subjects from week to week, month to month. So anyway, without further ado, talk to us about down. So what is down is our opening question.
Yeah, it's the under feathers of waterfowl. That's its like dictionary definition. So
that's the least sexiest description ever.
I know. It's so dull and tedious, like describing cardboard. But it's geese, ducks, swans are your basic sort of waterfowl, and then we don't really farm swans. We don't eat swans.
I was just gonna say that. Maybe not. Yeah.
Don't go plucking so swans, I think we're gonna bypass. I know very, very little about swan down. I've got to be honest. I think someone like a taxidermist might know more about swan down than me.
But you think perhaps the king might have a swan down duvet, me?
I think almost certainly. Yeah. Almost like an heirloom. And actually, the royals and stuff are actually quite interesting when it comes to down, because they've had eider downs and down duvets in the collection for hundreds of years apparently. So the durability of down is sort of not in question when it comes to high quality down. So with geese and ducks, you've got their flight feathers on top, the ones that you can see, and underneath those you've got the ones that keep them warm. Obviously these birds need to be really, really light. They need to be really, really water resistant, which is what the flight feathers job is partly, but the down itself is actually pretty water resistant on the birds as well. And they need to be lightweight and warm for flying at high altitudes, sitting on cold ponds, all that sort of thing. We take the down from the birds once the birds have been slaughtered, and then you get your down product, which is this incredibly insulated, really lightweight, amazing material. There's this awesome quote from, I think it's Hook, who was a scientist in the probably 19th century, and he did a lot of work on early microscopes, and he said that the closer you look at a man-made object, the more ugly it gets, whereas the closer you look at a natural object, the more beautiful it gets, or worse to that effect. So yeah, he's absolutely right as well. If you look at a razor blade with a powerful enough microscope, it looks blunt as anything. You look at something like down, or I don't know, any of these natural structures up close, it just gets more and more amazing.
Yeah, wow, that's really cool. And there's been, I guess, over the last, I don't know how we go in waves with fashion and clothing and so on, don't we? And I just sort of wanted to I guess mention that down's gone through, and I guess it still is going through a bit of what's the best term for it? It's not been a particularly well liked thing in the same way as fur, I suppose, has it? And I guess one of the questions for yourself is about, I guess, sustainability and how what we're doing generally, I guess, across industry to ensure that it's sourced responsibly.
Yeah, if you look at it as a sustainability point of view, which is a really tricky term because it encompasses so many different factors. Yeah. It's carbon impact, water use, all this sort of stuff, but it's also the responsibility and animal welfare side of things. I think for a long time I don't think down was ever quite like the fur industry, but certainly aspects of it could have been. And maybe somewhere between 10 or 15 years ago, there was big public outcry, quite rightly, about, and there had been footage that had been found of birds being live plucked. It tends to be geese that are live plucked. Ducks are I've never known of any ducks being live plucked, whereas goose down live plucking is a thing, I'm afraid. And yeah, there was massive public outcry. Suddenly it was on the front page of newspapers, big brands were implicated. And I think a lot of down brands had potentially taken their eye off the ball. This is quite a different world even 10 or 15 years ago. People didn't have an enormous amount of visibility on their supply chains. And whereas now every supplier we work with will get them to fill out huge numbers of forms about, where does this come from? Where does this come from? How do you source this? Does this have these particular environmental accreditations or certificates? Does it meet this chemical compliance? That's all relatively new. And with down, it was the same. So you'd buy your down from your wholesaler, who you might know personally quite well. You might be that you never met them, and you just, I ring up this guy, he gets me some down. And you didn't really know what happened beyond that. And it was all very transparent, very opaque, sorry. And we began an investigation a few years before I joined the company. And that became known as Down Codex, which has been Mountain Equipment's thing ever since. And basically the idea initially was, we think this is what our down supply chain is like. We don't actually know. We think this is what it's like. And then we asked some independent auditors, the IDFL, who are the International Down and Feather Laboratory, to look into this. And we said, right, we think that our farms are mostly fairly large with these sort of ducks in them. And then they went to confirm or deny that. And so we got a bit more of a picture about our supply chains. And then we started mapping them out a bit more closely. But it's still really hard. The down industry is still really complicated. Tracing back to individual farms will, I think, in almost all cases be impossible, in that you've got these very complicated supply chains. You might have loads of different intermediaries in them. And when you buy a down jacket, it'll have feathers that have been mixed together from all sorts of different places. Now, if you buy a down jacket from us, for example, we'll know that it's come from this supplier. We'll know that it's come from this supply chain. We'll know that it meets these accreditations or has been audited. But we couldn't tell you exactly where things come from because it's just so complicated. It would be like asking a leather shoe brand to say, "Can you tell me the farm where this shoe's leather came from?" It's basically impossible.
I guess, or the cow that this milk came from. Maybe that's a bad example because I think in some respects they can do. But and I guess I just wanted to get through that chat early on in our chat, really, and then and then the next step on from that, and again, one of those waves and cycles that we've seen the industry go through is he says in massive inverted commas synthetic down as well, and that, which I guess I think Cathy, we've spoken about this previously, is essentially just plastic. Is that right?
It is basically just plastic. Yeah. The synthetic down thing is really interesting. We don't ever use that term. We think it's pretty false because it doesn't look anything like down. It doesn't really behave like down. It's got a lot of advantages over some synthetic materials, and it's got some advantages over down as well. So it's less expensive than down. If you get it really, really wet, it doesn't start to clump like down might do. And it's got advantages over synthetic sheets, which is the sort of normal way that you'd see synthetics. And then it's a bit softer. You can baffle it so it looks more like down. It can be a bit loftier. It's sort of really comfortable and easy to move in. If you've got a jacket with, say, 100 grams per square meter synthetic fill in it or higher for a really thick jacket, they start to feel a bit boardy. They can feel quite stiff and a bit sort of armor-like. Whereas you can have a really warm jacket that's still nice and comfortable to move in, that's filled with so-called synthetic down, and it won't look like a synthetic jacket. It'll look more like a down jacket. So that's appealing to some people as well. But it's definitely not down.
I've just realised the jacket sort of look after and wash, and if somebody's just looking for an out and about jacket, a synthetic jacket could be a really good option. But a couple of years ago, there was a synthetic down snow globe at Kendal Mountain Film Festival, and my youngest daughter, just had the best time going in and grabbing. I can't remember what they had to grab, but it was a bit of a competition. And
Yeah.
I think it felt like weeks picking. I just found bits of this stuff all over the house for weeks.
I've been in the crystal maze.
Yeah. I mean, they loved it. It was great. They were zipped in and the machine came on and there was down everywhere. But yeah, it got everywhere. But I'm just going to go back to the down sourcing, because there's something really important that mountain equipment do with their Down Codex that is unique. So I did this with my jacket. I got the code off of an ME Trango jacket that we have, and I thought, right, how easy is it, and what information will I get? So I plugged it in. I just searched Down Codex online, and the Down Codex website came up immediately, and there's a big red box saying type in your code here. So the code is always with the garment labels, which will always be on the left-hand side, internal left-hand side of the garment, somewhere in a pocket or in a seam. And so I tapped in my code, and then I hit the button that said trace your down, which really appealed to my inner nerd. And a report came up and told me that my jacket was duck down, and from and I don't know how I pronounce it, it's going to be incorrect, Shaanxi province in China.
It's pretty close. That's probably as good as my pronunciation, I'm afraid. Yeah.
I'm not fluent. And on that area, or this sort of batch of down, if you like, was last audited on a 2019 visit, and it talked about the farms, the slaughterhouse, the hatchery, and the feather processing that was audited as part of that visit. And that starts giving you an idea of what you said, Matt, doesn't it, about how complex the sort of down supply chain is. And the report included the Responsible Down Standard certification. It told me the type, it was duck down, and it told me it was a minimum, or the garment told me I had a minimum fill power of 700 inside, and that the down content and fill would be a mix of cluster, fibre, feather, and other. What might other be?
It could be little bits of debris. If you think these are so when they come off the bird, they are then washed, sterilised, and washed, sterilised, and they're sorted. So it's a really, really complicated and sort of very thorough process. But even after that, these are all sorts of little bits can get through. And during the process of the sorting and the washing, things can get broken. So you've got like the barbs of the feathers, little bits of feather fibre, feather fragments, all that sort of stuff can get through. And you can also get just bits of dirt as well. Dirt in down is a bigger problem in cheaper down, but if you're not washing down very thoroughly, you can absolutely get bits of dirt in there, basically. In the same way that you would if you got sheep, you've got some wool from a sheep.
Fascinating. I've got like visual pictures in my mind of people sitting there gathering feathers of a certain size and putting them in a pile and then having a sneeze and everything's stuck.
It's a bit more automated, luckily.
I should hope so. I think the working conditions are probably better than that.
Having said that, when it comes to the lab report, so when you in the bottom right hand side of the Down Codex page, you'd get a little report on your particular batch of down. The testing for that is entirely done by humans with a microscope and a pair of tweezers. It's back-breaking work. It's really, really difficult. It's the sort of thing that there's quite a few labs that do it, but basically involves getting a mass of down and separating each individual fibre or each individual feather with a pair of tweezers and going, okay, there's 99 of those, and there's 1% of these. That's the type of down. Wow. So it's pretty hard work. Yeah.
Oh my word! So my actual fill power was rated at 750.
Okay, so that's pretty good.
The down in my jacket is better than the minimum. It was I hadn't done that process, and I've spoken about it to customers tons of times. I thought, well, I'm going to have a chat with you. I better actually do it myself, hadn't I? But it was really, really, really interesting and really important that people understand how much science goes into making sure that the garments that we're wearing are ethically and I think the word sustainable is a tricky one when it comes to animals being killed for food in the first place, but certainly ethical is really key, and it's all in with the price. And I always say, please don't buy cheap down. Live plucking is even worse than it actually sounds, just buy ethically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like some people don't care about free range meat or would buy whatever meat they can. Other people will care much more than others. But I think with something like live plucking, you've got a proven thing that's really, really, really unpleasant. It's I think barbaric's a pretty appropriate word.
Yeah.
And I think with if you don't know where your down comes from, it might be that it's totally fine. It might be that it's not. And the thing is, you don't know. Not only do you not know, but the company who's selling it might not know either. So there'll be cases where if there's no certification in place at all, they might know exactly what's going on. They just haven't ticked the boxes in the certification process. It might be they just don't advertise the scheme that they're using. It might be they're really thorough. It also might be that they don't really know.
Don't care.
And I think if you just right, okay, this particular sales guy's got a deal on, I'll get that. And then I'll chase next week because that's cheaper. And you can swap and match really quickly. Whereas because our supply chains are, audited to RDS3 now, but also we've got quite long-standing relationships with our down wholesalers. We try not to chop and change too quickly. If you chop and change quickly, it just means you've got more paperwork to do. You've got more auditing, more sort of difficulties involved. So we try to find a good one and stick with it. Obviously, we do change sometimes. That might be due to pricing. The most recent supply chain we moved away from was in Russia. So fairly obvious reason there. We had an excellent supply chain. We'd used them for almost 10 years. And we knew exactly how that worked. It had 3 farms in it. They'd all been audited. It had a slaughterhouse that had changed procedure due to our codex sort of requests. So we were really pleased with the supply chain. The down was excellent. It was about as free range as you're ever going to get. There was, we'd had videos of great big, lakes with geese swimming around on them. We were like, brilliant. And then we've got a war that, without getting too political, we didn't entirely agree with. And sourcing down from Russia is currently really difficult. We now source down from Ukraine instead.
So just want to go back to the cheap down things, because you've mentioned a couple of bits within there, both of you within the chat, as there's the live plucking piece, I think that's really struck me, but also and I'm going to use a non-technical term, dirty down, as in it could have other stuff that's not feathers in there potentially. But is there any other difference then between sourcing cheap down versus more ethical stuff?
Yeah, I think one of the big things will be the amount of washing that it goes through in that sterilisation. So if you go to an outdoor shop and you grab a load of down jackets, you can sometimes smell a little bit of down on them. It tends to be more on the duck down products because duck down tends to smell more than goose down. Right. And you can sometimes have a hint of down smell. It's not particularly unpleasant, but some people don't like it. But if you then went to the same area with a lot of really, really inexpensive jackets, then the chances are, because the washing and sterilising is quite complex, it's labour intensive, it requires a lot of energy, a lot of water to wash it all. It's easy to start missing stages or just washing slightly less thoroughly, and then all of a sudden you've got down that really can smell quite strongly. So that's definitely a concern. And the other thing is the down might have been. It's quite funny actually. So there used to be almost a dirty word in the down industry, which was couché, which was a mixture of virgin down and recycled down. Recycled down was this, oh my God, I don't want to touch this. This is being used. It's no good. The world has moved on, and recycled down is now viewed as a really positive thing, and it absolutely is. The key with recycled down is to make sure the down is still in good quality. So we use only 700 fill power. So fill power is the sort of measure of how much volume a certain amount of down takes up, and 700 would be very, very high quality. And I don't know the percentages of how much down would be reached 700, but it wouldn't be very high. And 700 fill power recycled down is about as good as you're ever going to get. So it's going to have still an excellent lifespan. It's in that stage of the down's life, there's been no animal involved at all, because it's coming from used duvets, used sleeping bags and stuff. It's been through the same sterilising and washing processes as normal down, and it's got it's got a lot of benefits in terms of you're not getting a perfectly good material and lobbing it in the landfill or burning it, which is the alternative. So recycled down is now a really positive thing, and it's not got the same downsides that it viewed to have before.
Just going back to the sort of the cleaning and the processing side of things, if you suffer from allergies, can that have an impact if it's not properly cleaned, the down?
Yeah, it can. Down itself, I'm not going to say never creates allergy problems, because I'm sure someone out there is allergic to down. But down, if it's held within good face fabrics, like fabrics that are properly downproof, then the down itself is stuck inside. It can't sort of get out. I think if you've got a lower quality down, which has got lots of dust in there, it potentially has got mites in it, it's got all sorts of really sort of fragmented pieces in there, then that stuff could get through fabrics and that could create allergy problems. I think the advice tends to be, buy a high quality down product, which will have better fabrics, it'll have better quality down inside it. And then, we've never heard of anyone having an allergy to any of our products, for example. Having said that, if you work in the factory and you're working with just the raw down, then people tend to wear masks, because it might not be an allergy, but it's a sensitivity thing. If you've got loads of really fine fibers going up your nose and stuff, it's not pleasant. So, people tend to wear masks if they're working with it all day, but that's when it's just the down itself flying around. It's not the same as in the product.
So we've actually covered fill power. We forgot to mention that at the beginning, but it's a really critical measure of down. And we did actually cover that in a previous podcast about sleeping bags. I think it was, Wayne.
Yeah, I think so.
Way back in the day when we started.
In the early days, yeah.
Yeah. And as you allude to, fabric can be or needs to be downproof. And on a higher quality product, that's generally a fabric, and you'll have to correct me here, Matt, if I'm wrong, that's woven to a tighter weave, and you can't see the little bits of white pushing out through it. If you can see the little bits of white feathers pushing out through, that fabric isn't downproof, and over time you're going to have a natural kind of seepage of leaking of down out of your garment. You can sometimes see those just in seaming, but after you've worn it a few times, they'll disperse and that's it. But it's another thing with a cheaper fabric, or if someone's creating a down garment perhaps to a price point as a priority rather than a design element and a longevity element, then that down can sort of leak out over time. Yeah,
definitely.
And so where I'd like the conversation to get to is like, why is what you mentioned a little bit about this, Matt, but going on from why is down such a good insulator then? Why is it so common? Why you mentioned eider down duvets and so on. Why has it been, why have we cottoned on to that?
Why is it so good is a really good question. Like, that was basically what I spent my PhD on. I wanted to work out why it was so good. My initial idea for the PhD was make down better, and then the more I looked at it, I was like, oh crikey, it's actually really quite good. This is more than a 3-year project, just improved it. It's a multitude of factors. So I think the biggest one is that it's really, really good at holding a lot of thickness. So maintaining a thickness of air without weighing very much. There's lots of materials though that can do that. So things like foam is really good at being thick without weighing very much, but foam's not very compressible. So down's really compressible, yet also maintains this thickness. That's really unusual, and it's because it's got a mixture of really fine fibers that trap loads of air, and they also trap radiative heat loss. So this is the heat loss that happens through radiation. It's probably the trickiest heat loss mechanism to get your head around, but it relies on basically solid objects being in the way, and fine fibers in particular are very good at stopping that. Someone did some computer analysis on this a few years ago and basically found out that the down had like a fractal structure, which is like a self-replicating, like tree-like structure, and it's basically mathematically close to being perfect when it comes to blocking radiative heat. So that's pretty hard to improve on. And then the wider fibers it has, they're still pretty fine, but they are really good at maintaining the thickness. So they keep it puffed up. If it was all the really fine fibers, it just collapses under its own weight, whereas the thick fibers there to maintain the thickness. I found out that the bigger fibers as well, and the smaller ones that come off them, they're not just like cylinders. They've got like they're almost a curved triangle type shape, like a Toblerone, but with the corners like sort of chamfered off. And that's really clever because it stops them buckling. So it stops them buckling, but it also means that when they bend, they have like a predetermined form they want to return to. So this is another factor. The thing is, there's loads of different factors why it's so good. It's internally. So if you get a bit of down and you like put it like a salami slicing machine, the internal structure is incredibly complicated. It's not just like down throughout. It's like if you get a stick of rock and it says something down the middle, down's got loads of different structures inside it. So wool is exactly the same, actually. So wool and down are both keratin based. Wool is like one type of keratin, and down is a subtly different type of keratin, alpha and beta keratin. And these make different X-ray diffraction patterns, which is all to do with crystallinity and all this sort of thing. But inside down, it's like a composite structure. You've got really, really thin rods, which are very stiff. And then you've got this soft material around it, which is the matrix. So a bit like carbon fiber, you've got very stiff rods of carbon surrounded by a squidgy matrix of epoxy resin or something like that. Yeah, down's exactly the same. You've got this composite structure, which gives you the best of both worlds in terms of durability and also strength. So yeah, it's got an amazing 3D structure. It's got an amazing internal structure. Chemically, keratin is really strong. It's very durable, and it's got really strong bonds that hold together. It's also covered in grease. So it's really water repellent. I think it's a bit sort of grim in that we don't have the smell of down. We don't want it to clump together, so we wash all the oils off it, and that gets rid of the smell. It stops them clumping, which is great. But then, some people want water repellent down, so then they get a load of synthetic
chemicals,
stick it back on to put the water repellents back, whereas geese and ducks don't tend to suffer too much with lacking water repellents.
No, I mean, I must admit, I've never picked a live duck up and sniffed it up close. They don't strike me as particularly smelly animals.
No, they do all right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I've swum through a lot of geese
but
duck recently,
that's not the feathers, is it? That's
I guess not. Yeah, it was interesting. That was one of my questions, was about again, he says in big inverted commas, hydrophobic down, and it's dead interesting. You mentioned that bit there, and what our listeners can't appreciate. I mean, they're getting it from your voice, but can't appreciate the sort of the glee, the awe that's in your eyes as you're talking about this as well. It's amazing seeing that enthusiasm for the subject. You obviously love the structure of it and so on. It's really cool.
I think you have to be into it if you want to do a PhD in something.
Whatever.
Anybody who wants to do a PhD in any subject, the only thing I would say is go for something you're interested in. If you're not interested, you will not finish. It's going to be just brutal.
You'll hate it.
You have to enjoy doing it. Yeah, because there is a lot of hard bits.
And I guess just going on from that, there's sort of the structure, what makes it so good at insulating and so on. And then I guess it's a bit of a basic question, but what sort of products is down used in then? What do we see down in?
I think the one that everyone now knows on the high street, and it's something that's changed quite a bit over the last 50 years, is down jackets. So down jackets were pretty much invented by a guy called Finch, who used them on Everest. In the 1920s, everyone laughed at his jacket because they thought, this giant inflatable thing, what on earth is this? And it was basically ignored then to like the 50s. And then people were like, you know what, this is quite effective. Down jackets, whether they're big, small, and then, for a long time it remained it was only really mountaineers and slightly strange oddballs at the edge of society who were wearing down. We associated with down suits, people on Everest, the sort of hardy mountaineers hanging out at, campsites and things like this, or going at the Eiger for some crazy reason. And then, I don't know, probably 20 years ago, something like this, down started becoming a slightly more mainstream thing to wear. So down jackets became much more fashionable. And then narrow baffle jackets came along perhaps 15 years ago, and they became, a huge appeal across the market. And now, almost everyone's got a down jacket. Then you've also got down trousers if you're going somewhere really cold, down suits if you're going somewhere very, very cold. You can have down vests, all the sort of underlays, down mitts. Down mitts are a super warm item. But if you've got something like Raynaud's syndrome, where you've really struggled with circulation in your hands, and you're going to the Scotland or the Lake District of Wales in the middle of winter, having a pair of down mitts in your bag is not a bad idea. I've got a friend who struggles with Raynaud's, and even if he's going backpacking in Scotland in the summer, which we do quite a lot, he will always have a pair of massive mitts with him. And I just think, what on earth are they doing? But he knows there's a point where his hands are unable to do anything unless he has these mitts with him. So you can't really have too much insulation if you've got that sort of thing. And then sleeping bags will be the other big one.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. I've just got a pair of merino mitts, and they are incredible. Absolutely incredible. Just I was just over in lucky to go over it to Iceland a few weeks ago, and took them
Oh,
over there. It was just absolutely amazing. I was just, like wandering around with these great big mitts on my hand, going, "These are amazing." And I've had like the synthetic down ones for a while, but
yeah.
they're just incredible. Yeah, absolutely amazing. So
Down
yeah,
is actually
go on, sorry.
also popping up in a couple of other things as well. You can
Mhm.
get down in actually integral in your sleeping mat to
Yeah.
boost
Oh, wow.
insulative performance. Yeah, so there's in fact there's a mountain equipment aerolite, I think.
Aerostat, yeah.
Aerostat,
Aerostat.
that's it. Yeah, so you can buy down sleeping mats. You can get your down booties as well for your tent in the evening, which are
Absolutely,
just
yeah.
magnificent. That's just like a slice of heaven. You can just sit there in your down booties, lovely jubbly. And we did actually have some socks a while ago by a Spanish brand called Lorpen, mountaineering socks, and they had an element of down in them as well. I do remember reading it, but I didn't get any further than that in the design process. So whether that's an insulative layer underneath, but then that would compact. So I haven't gone too far down that. I need to go and look at that, but I do remember seeing that they had down in as well.
Yeah, I've not seen down socks. I've seen,
No.
yeah, like we've seen down hats, and some fashion brands have done some slightly weird stuff with down as well, just for sort of the visual element.
Well,
But
I
yeah,
have to say, I have tried. This year is the first time. I get fed up of having a cold bum, so I have
yeah,
bought a down skirt,
yeah,
and it's lovely.
yeah, down skirts are
Sadly,
amazing. I think if
yeah.
like, men and women alike, if they wanted an extra item of clothing to keep them warm, it shouldn't be an extra jacket because you've probably got 4 jackets already on. You should wear another item of leg wear. So, insulation is way more effective if it's even. So, yeah, insulated leg wear is absolutely the next thing that everyone should have. And with a skirt, you turn your 2 cylinders into 1 cylinder, so you vastly reduce your heat loss area. It's really quick to get on and off. It doesn't impact your movement. Yeah, so like polar travelers, male or female, almost all have skirts with them nowadays because it keeps the wind down and it doesn't impact your skiing. So yeah, it's kilts, skirts, put them what you like. They're really effective.
Yeah. No, I'm going to test sleeping in mine actually because I often wake up with a cold bum.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm gonna test sleeping in mine. I've got a trip coming up, so where I'll be super cold. But I bought my down skirt this year. We've not had any snow really, so I haven't had a chance to sort of try it in anger, other than having to stand around for ages with power stretch tights. If you're on a football pitch line or a rugby pitch line in the screaming cold, power stretch tights and a down skirt are just like the clothing of champions, I have to say.
Absolutely.
Top fashion advice. I like that.
Well, yeah, I'm not
Well,
sure I'd pull it off fashion wise, but who cares? I'm warm.
or me as 6'6". I had visions of you going out and doing snow angels in your down skirt. I thought
There's
that's
not been
where you
any
were going.
snow.
I know, yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, some of that then goes on to sort of tips on how to reduce heat loss, especially while we're sleeping, if we're out wild camping or whatever, or just camping generally. In any time, I was going to say in winter, but any time of year in the UK,
No, Easter,
probably.
it can be brutally cold.
Yeah, well,
psychologically,
exactly, yeah.
you're like, spring's here, I'm going outside, and then at night it's freezing.
Yeah, absolutely. It can still be like well below freezing at Easter. I've had I remember a really grim bivvy in North Wales where like woke up like ice all over the outside of the sleeping bag and it was just freezing until the sun came up. Yeah. In terms of ways to lose heat loss, I think it's really important to remember with all insulated stuff that you're the source of the heat. So if you're totally wasted or like you've had no food or you're ill, all thermoregulation just goes out the window. So it's much harder to keep warm. Like if you think of when you got the flu or something like that, your body temperature just hasn't got a clue what it's doing. So that was my first thing. Make sure you've eaten enough. If you're totally knackered, like you're doing a huge day out and you think you might be in calorie deficit and just plain old exhausted, make sure you've got more sleeping bag than you might normally take. Being inside a shelter is a really good idea. Bivvying always feels much colder than sleeping in a tent. If you've got a tent, like tents with 2 layers of fabric are much warmer than one with like loads of mesh, for example. Some of these super light tents are basically a tarp. They're not going to provide you with any warmth, whereas like a decent like 3 or 4 season tent will have quite a lot of fabric in them. They'll keep pretty much all the wind out and you won't feel like you're super exposed while in the tent. that makes a massive difference. So, especially if you start cooking with your stove in the tent. I mean, I do not recommend that unless you know what you're doing. In fact, no, don't do it. But with a sleeping bag, that's important. It fits you. I think people will say, "Oh, temperature ratings must be coming next." I'm going to leave temperature ratings for a little bit. But yeah, make sure the sleeping bag fits you. If it's far too long or far too short, it's not going to work. If it's really, really wide and you're really skinny, that's not going to be great. But also, if you're broader and you're pressing hard against the insulation, you're going to push the insulation flat. It's not going to work very well. Think about what you're lying on. So if you're lying on snow or ice, it conducts heat really, really quickly. Something like lying on granite is really fast at conducting heat away from you. So I don't know, say you're stuck in the toilet block of the Aiguille de Midi and you're lying on basically a massive slab of concrete, it's absolutely freezing. Whereas if you're lying in like the woods or something like that, or like on grass that's dry, it's much less conductive of heat, so it's not going to be as cold. And a sleeping mat is really important as a result. So you lose loads of heat through the ground, especially if you're on something conductive. Way to work out, what's the most effective sleeping mat is look at the R values. The R value is the thermal resistance. There's a test that was developed a few years ago. We were part of the sort of committee who came up with the test. It's not a perfect test. None of these lab tests are perfect, but it's pretty good. And a bigger R value means a warmer sleeping mat. So if you're going somewhere really cold, an R value of maybe 2 or 3 is not really going to be enough. Or at least if you're happy with that, you're going to need a warmer sleeping bag.
So what is it? What is a big R value then?
The R value of 5 is the warmest mat that we make.
Right.
There's some mats on the market that have got much higher R values than that. I think there's one that's about 8.5 now. But I think it's worth stating, and we make a reflective mat as well as other people. Mats that have reflective technology to make their high R value do not maintain the R value for the course of their lifespan. So the reflective mats do break down somewhat. So basically they've got mylar foil in them, and the coatings start to wear off. So if you've got a reflective mat for 5 years, it won't be as warm on day after 5 years of use that it was on day one. Whereas a mat filled with down, for example, will be just as warm after many years of use as it was at the start. So these mats with super high R values are incredibly impressive, and I'm not doing a disservice when I say that they are super duper good, but they are not going to be as warm after many years of use as they were at the start.
Oh, I'm feeling another podcast coming on about sleeping mats, Wayne.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's dead interesting. Yeah, my son's just been on a little local camping expedition and hike with a bunch of his mates, and I wanted to give him one of my camping mats, which is I can't remember what brand it is now, but it's an inflatable one with like ribs, so it's quite it blows up to be quite thick. And he was like, "No, I'm just going to take my little roll mat." I was like, you're gonna be cold, because it was a matter of weeks ago. We're in February recording this, and he was like, no, I'll be fine. So I said, how did you get on? And he said, yeah, I didn't sleep very well because I'm cold. I was like,
yeah.
But he has got quite a thick sleeping bag, but yeah, obviously that didn't do it. It was he said I rolled over loads in the night, and it's that old favorite, all your heat escapes through your hip, which I always get. Is you can't lie perfectly motionless on it all night, can you?
No.
I just quickly want to talk about clumping, because we've sort of mentioned a little bit about that in this one and in previous podcasts, and I know we covered it elsewhere. So that's when down gets wet and clumps together.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And sort of reduces some of the insulation properties of the down then. And yeah, that happens particularly if you wash it, but sometimes also when it gets wet, hence the hydrophobic down bit as well, I guess. But yeah, I guess it's just that fairly technical term that we mention in conversation all the time, but actually forget that people might not know what we're on about.
Clumping tends to happen because the feathers get wet, so they get less stiff, and then they start with mat together. It tends not to be a problem if you just get them wet in use, unless you get them properly soaked. If you do get a down jacket like completely drenched, don't worry. I mean, it's not dead. I think there's it can look pretty sorry, especially if you wash your jacket. It'll come out of the washing machine really quite miserable, and you might well think, oh, this is it, I've ruined it. I don't think, unless you washed it with some horrible chemical, could you actually fully ruin one. You shouldn't be washing a down jacket every week or something. They don't need washing that regularly. The clumping basically will get rid of if you thoroughly dry it. and then dry it and dry it and dry it some more. Don't use a super high heat because the down itself will be totally fine, even up to like 170 degrees C, but your fabrics will not be. Their fabrics will definitely melt before the down will get damaged. And your heat transfers and things like that on the logos, they might start peeling if you get them really hot. So don't use super high temperature. And you can dry them on the line if you've got a really nice sunny day. But you do need to spend a little bit of time like teasing them apart, these lumps that form, because otherwise the air doesn't get into them, they don't dry out. So yeah, spend a little bit of time teasing them apart. And the washing bit is relatively straightforward. You want to use a specialist down washing product, and you wash on usually a delicate cycle. You don't want to put loads of things in the washing machine, and then you want to rinse them quite thoroughly. So you might need to do an extra rinse cycle once you're done. But the difficult bit is the drying. It's just because you need to be really, really thorough.
And what about we putting a tennis ball in with it when you're washing it? I've had that top tip before. Is that?
Yeah, I think when you're drying it, putting a tennis ball in can help. We never say it's a hindrance. Right. To be honest, when we're doing them at work, we don't tend to bother. But I think it depends a lot on the size of your washing machine and what sort of product you're trying to wash. If you've got a really bulky down jacket or a sleeping bag with, say, more than 300 grams of down in, so something a bit warmer, you might struggle to do that in a domestic washing machine, and you might struggle with a domestic tumble dryer as well. I've washed like my duvet at home in a commercial laundrette, like works really, really well. I've never taken a down product to the laundrette because I can do it at work. But I think with the laundrette machine, you'd be fine in the washing machine. I'd be a bit worried about the tumble dryers just if they got too hot. So you could, just stress to the person who runs the laundrette, how hot does this go? I really don't want it to get too hot. And they might be just like, yeah, no problem. But if it's a machine where you're not sure, I'd probably just take it home and line dry it instead.
Yeah, stick it on the line. Yeah, good. I like that. I nearly killed one, or I thought I'd killed one of your sleeping bags a few years ago. It was absolutely honking after something that I did, so I washed it and it came out. I was like, oh great, that's that dead. But it wasn't at all. Like you said, a mixture of like teasing and like a little bit of gentle rubbing, and it's nice and fluffy again. So it's fine. But yeah, sorry, I just thanks for sort of reiterating that for us, Matt. Are we just about there, Cathy? Or you're looking very pensive? I think you had one more.
If it's all too much cleaning your down kit, there's some very easy options. There are companies that will professionally clean it for you, and that makes a big difference. I've had an expedition bag come back looking literally as good as new, and it was like wafer thin when it got posted out. Mountain Equipment, of course, offer a lovely service for mountain equipment products. And also, if you've got an old item, am I correct in saying, Matt, that you can actually have it replenished at Mountain Equipment as well? So,
sort of. If you send us a sleeping bag that's on its last legs, we will. It depends. We don't officially yet have a full wash and repair service, but it's coming very soon, so I can tell you that. But we do work with partners who Mountaineering Designs is the one we usually recommend, who do full replenishments. They'll take all the down out of the sleeping bag, they'll put you down in. So in general, like you say, a wash is all that's needed. But we have done all sorts of different repairs as well for sleeping bags in-house, and all sorts of different rejuvenations. We've repaired ones which have had damage from stoves. Has been quite a common one. We've had people set fire to half their bag and had to replace half of it. Or we get some really, really old sleeping bags back sometimes. We've had one recently that was over 50 years old.
Oh.
And it's usually just a zip replacement. It's really, really simple. And then back it goes.
Brilliant. Oh, that's fantastic.
Well, I think as always, we could probably talk to you all day, Matt. To be honest, I've got low, but we try to keep everything relatively tight, I suppose, is what we're saying, without too much wittering on. But yeah, that was brilliant. I know I've been looking forward to speaking to you for some time because Cathy keeps mentioning you in all sorts of different. So it is, and as I said earlier, I just love that enthusiasm as you're talking about the subject as well. It's just brilliant to speak to experts who have that passion about stuff. So thank you very much for joining us today, Matt. That was episode 41 of Outdoor Gear Chat, and of course we were talking down with Dr. Down. So how to keep warm with Dr. Down. Over to you, Cathy.
Yeah, well, you can find out where your mountain equipment down item comes from by plugging the code into www.downcodex.co.uk. You can also see a fantastic range of the mountain equipment products, from clothing to sleeping mats to packs and accessories, on www.climbers-shop.com or in any of our stores. And also we have a full page of where you can get your kit mended, washed, replenished, available on our sister website, which is www.joebrownoutdooracademy.com.